Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to say that I'm really glad I'm here back with you giving speeches and interpreting. And today, I would like to talk to you about a topic that seems science fiction, but it's not. Today, I will be talking about human cloning. As far as we know, no one's actually cloned a whole person, but cloning human embryos has been possible for nearly a decade. We all know that religious beliefs and ethics are some of the reasons why we are not cloning humans right now. But ethics aren't the only thing holding scientists back. Cloning, as I said before, isn't the sci-fi marvel we think it is. It can be dangerous, often ineffective, and most of all, we just haven't thought of a good enough reason to do it. To understand all of this, we have to know who is Dolly, Dolly the sheep. Dolly was born on February 23rd, 1997. When she was born, the world was shocked, surprised, but also the world was scared. Creating Dolly meant taking an egg from another sheep, removing its DNA-carrying nucleus, fusing into the egg a cell from another sheep, then hitting the resulting cell with electricity. The resulting cell began to grow and divide. It was successfully implanted in a sheep's uterus, and eventually it became a healthy lamb. This process is called reproductive cloning. From that moment on, dramatic advances were taking place in genetic knowledge, as well as in the genetic technology often referred to as genetic engineering. Some proposals suggested that persons of great intellectual or artistic achievement or of great virtue should be cloned. That would make the whole humankind improve in the end. But that is not as easy as it seems. I must tell you that cloning Dolly took 277 very expensive tries just to get a single sheep, Dolly. Nowadays, cloning mammals generally has a success rate of about 10% to 20%, better than 1 in 277, but still a majority inefficient process. Scientists have found that some embryos expire before they're implanted. Others result in miscarriages. Sorry. And those that make it to the term often die soon after birth or end up with severe abnormalities. Simply, these are risks that are easier to take when it comes to experimenting with sheep than with people. But the question here is, why haven't we tried and cloned humans? Well, after Dolly's birth, there were several attempts, but they were not successful at all. And also the world started to ban human cloning, and that made scientific research more difficult. In March 2004, Hwang Woo Suk, a South Korean scientist, and his colleagues reported that they had successfully cloned human embryos. The next year, they reported having created 11 human embryonic cell lines from 185 eggs. This seemed to open the door to using reproductive cloning to create human embryonic cells, and from them create differentiated human cells and tissues from persons' own body cells, or to create cloned babies, for example. But this was not the case. By December 2005, Hwang Woo Suk's work shown to be entirely fraudulent. And although they continue to talk about his efforts to clone humans as late as 2008, people stopped listening to them because it was completely a lie. But as I said at the beginning of a speech, we know for sure that humans can be successfully cloned. Why so? I will tell you the reason. In January 2018, a Chinese group led by Qiang and Zhen reported the birth of the first monkey clones. It was not an efficient process. About 80 cloned embryos led to 6 pregnancies and 2 live births. Even so, reproductive cloning had succeeded for the first time in a primate. And what are we if we search on the Wikipedia? We are primates, an evolved kind within the primate class. So now the scientific community has a solid proof that human embryos can be cloned. And we have known for 2 years that cloned monkeys' embryos can give cloned infant monkeys. So why has no one announced an effort to make cloned human babies? The laws have not changed substantially since Dolly's birth. And the question here is, should they change? Should these laws change to make cloned embryos or cloned babies? Non-human cloning has become, to some extent, normalized. Several companies offer cloning services for pets, especially dogs, or for livestock, for example. For example, the world's champion polo team has for several years used cloned ponies. We see that science can really help us right now thanks to cloning. In the future, therapeutic cloning will bring enhanced possibilities to organ transplantation and other health benefits, for example. I totally agree with that use of science. But when I talk about cloning, most people do not think of the great benefits of it. They think of cloning as a fantasy mechanism to clone, for example, Da Vinci, St. Peter, Albert Einstein, or Marilyn Monroe, for example. But if we seek to multiply great benefactors of humankind, such as persons of great intelligence or character, we also might obtain people like Hitler or Bin Laden. They were not stupid people, you know, like you don't control half Europe if you're stupid. So if we clone some of the greatest minds, we might have we might end up having a dictator like Albert Einstein with greatest intelligence than Hitler. Why? Because the individual produced by cloning will be a different person from the one whose genotype is cloned. The, I mean, the person cloned is not the same as the person that is dead now or the person that we are cloning. In pop culture, for example, cloning is used to bring people back from the dead, but that's not how it works. Cloning someone would only create a twin, not a replica. For example, identical twins have the same genetics, but not necessarily the same personalities. It must be pointed out that cloning technology has not yet been developed to an extent that would make possible to produce a healthy human individual by cloning. Some horror movies and books show us an scenario where people create slaves clones to harvest their organs in case they need one. But also, that is not only unethical, but unnecessary. Why clone an entire person when you can just make the parts you need? Something theoretically therapeutic cloning can solve. Therapeutic cloning is almost identical to reproductive, except the cloned embryo is never implanted in an uterus. Instead, the embryo is cloned for the sole purpose of extracting stem cells. Stem cells have the incredibly ability to turn into any other cell in the human body, which means they are great for developing new treatments for disease and have the potential to repair or regenerate tissues and organs. The thing about stem cells is that they are pretty limited resource. The most substantial source for embryonic stem cells lasts like 5 or 2 days. So we must clone them. And sometimes when normal stem cells, the body fights them because the body thinks it's a disease. But if we have the genetics of a patient and we clone that cell from that patient and we introduce that cell inside the patient, it's pretty probable that the body of that patient is not going to fight against their own cells. Anyways, this kind of cloning is still in a research stage, so we cannot implement it right now. Dear interpreters, in my opinion, cloning has a lot of advantages. Our opinion is always influenced by movies or by what people thought, for example, in 1997 with the birth of Dolly the sheep. But now we know that the clone would not be that special, in fact. It would never be an exact copy of a living or formerly living person, so it's not that scary at the end. I really, really hope that people on the scientific community start making some advantages in the cloning research, so we can all benefit from it. Would you like, I would like to ask you something. Would you like an exact mini you, although with another personality and a different life? Or are you completely against it? Thank you so much.